So what the hell is the DPRK FA doing? Welcome back to DPRK Athletics. My name is Yong Jahong, and today we are going to be wondering, why is the DPRK not participating in the boys under-17 AFC Asian Cup, while at the same time having such important meetings with people at the top of the AFC and seen as a model to follow? It seems kind of like a dichotomy, doesn't it? The DPRK FA just completely withdrew with no reason given from the under-17 boys Asian Championship, which will be taking place in Saudi Arabia in May. It was sudden. The team had planned on being there, and we have no idea why they didn't show up. But then the next day, there's an interesting press release from the AFC. So one day later, on 29th April, in Vancouver, Canada, on the other side of the world, Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa, the Asian Football Confederation president, met with DPR Korea Football Association President Kim Il-guk on Wednesday, reaffirming the federation's commitment to advancing football development in the country. Now, how does that make any sense? The AFC president expressed his deep appreciation for the DPRK FA's culture of excellence, hailing them as a model for developing a dynamic pipeline of future stars. And here's a final piece to the puzzle from a Korean-only article, which I will read a machine translation of because I'm too lazy to simply sit there and translate the whole thing myself. But amidst the continuing phenomenal performances of the DPRK's age group women's national teams, the attention of football fans is focused on whether the DPRK's top team, Naekohyang Women's FC, will make an appearance in the Women's Asian Champions League semifinals to be held in Suwon in May. Naekohyang has not yet announced whether it will participate or not. Although the registration deadline is the 4th of May, given precedents such as the Pyeongchang Olympics, the possibility that they will notify their decision at the last minute if they decide to participate cannot be ruled out. With the prize money for the winner being 1 million USD and the runner-up getting 500,000 USD, Naekohyang, already having demonstrated formidable strength in the group stage, is a strong contender for the championship. Anyway, so I thought we'd kind of talk about the situation right now. I'm here in Hiroshima. I'm in a local izakaya and I'm having some local specialties, but as always, I'm starting off with this amazing on-tap Asahi beer, which is one of my favorite beers in the whole world. Don't be hating. It's so good. Asahi on tap is one of my favorites. So I've got this delicious fish cake with cheese, right? Goes perfect with the beer. So yeah, my real question is the DPRK going to withdraw? Because the incentive is so strong. Not only do they get $1 million if they win the competition, which is it's a possibility. I wouldn't say it's a certainty because Tokyo is very strong, as is the side from Melbourne. I also believe that it is very politically dangerous for the DPRK to engage with the ROK in that way. Now, sure, it's through an international federation that they will be heading to the ROK, but the DPRK has showed a complete unwillingness to go to ROK for any sort of sporting competition after the announcement of the anti-unification policy back in very late 2023, I believe. So there's a really big push and a pull. The incentive is really high, but also the consequence of going could also be very high. So why would the DPRK not go? That's one thing to think about. First of all, they don't want their athletes to have the experience of staying in the ROK, no matter how closed off it's going to be, because, there's going to be security. They're going to be basically locked in their hotel, as far as I know. They're not really going to get any experience of the local flavor, which isn't much different from how they travel around most of the world, but I think it will be especially doubly so in the ROK. They'll still see how society is. They'll still see how fans are reacting to them. So it's always kind of a cultural threat, because you particularly don't want people who are kind of higher up in the society, who these football players are kind of part of the upper crust of society. You don't want them to start getting ideas about wanting to kind of incite political change within their own society by seeing the ROK, because the ROK is more accessible because there's that language thing. There's really no country in the world where you're going to encounter Korean more than DPRK and ROK, and so that makes ROK uniquely dangerous for the DPRK.
What is your name? Thank you.
And so these two ladies just asked for my username, which is really funny. Now I really feel like a celebrity. I have to try this okonomiyaki before it gets cold. So this okonomiyaki, it comes with like green onion, which I think is kind of the appeal of it. It kind of, it has like a nice, it's a really greasy, it kind of gives it a little bit more of a fresh taste than the standard okonomiyaki. I think it's a little bit of a Hiroshima style thing. So they want to do everything that they can to stop engagement with the ROK, right? And so even when, and it's clear that like not everybody is on board with it from what I've seen from people who are in the DPRK, but they all have to follow it. One other thing worth mentioning is that they were looking to host, I think it was the Asian Youth Table Tennis Championship in Pyongyang, I think recently, but then that was also canceled. And you have to wonder, like, is it because they don't want people from the ROK coming into their borders? On the other hand, they really haven't had an international competition aside from the Pyongyang Marathon, which was also canceled. So you have to wonder, the DPRK wants to be as successful at football as possible, but they also are being really clandestine, really closed off to most of the rest of the world, right? So it's kind of like they're kind of in their own catch-22. It's like, do they, want to advertise themselves by winning a competition, or do they want to play it safe and win when it's convenient for them, but when it's not convenient for them, then just pull out? But I will say that if we look to history, because when you're trying to look at the future, you're always trying to look to history. Historically, the DPRK has pulled out of competitions with no notice whatsoever. So I will now try the tuna and Hiroshima roll, which is a tuna roll. And I think the Hiroshima is what makes it local to Hiroshima. But that definitely adds something. That adds like a little bit of a kick, but I don't know what it is. It's really delicious, though. I know, that's almost like a buttery tuna roll or something. Overall, this meal is great. Anyway, I'll kind of try to finish off my discussion because I keep getting off track. And so, like, if you look at the history of the Ari Sports Club, which is a DPRK ROK cooperative football championship, the DPRK twice just pulled out due to political situations for no reason. Just basically political problems happen, DPRK pulls out. Another situation is, I think when the DPRK got into the 1999 World Basketball Championship, they had the chance to go play there in, I believe, Canada. They pulled out because their star player got injured. So, and we don't have official confirmation of this, but basically because the star player got injured, they felt that they had no chance of winning anymore. So that's what they did. So there could be a litany of reasons why the DPRK will pull out. If you're going to follow the DPRK, you have to be flexible because, as you know, we have followed the AFC Women's Champions League from the beginning. The DPRK started at the lowest tier, and they've pushed all the way to the semifinal. But and it would really be a shame if they weren't able to play in the semifinal, Nekohyang. And I'm prepared to go down to Suwon to see it, but we're going to have to wait until 4th of May to figure out if they're going to participate at all. And you feel that they kind of have the AFC over a barrel right now because the AFC sees the DPRK punching way above the AFC's weight and making them competitive on a global scale. But then on the other hand, you have the DPRK just saying, oh, well, when I don't want to participate, I'm not going to participate. Just like under 17 boys Asian championship, we don't want to play, we're not going to play. And of course, they're going to get like fines and everything. I think another thing to remember is that the DPRK is not a rich country. They are not, paying for all the flights and all of the teams to go out and play in these competitions. They're only going to go if they're serious about winning or they get money to play. For example, I've mentioned this a lot of times, but the Ice Hockey Federation, they play in the international ice hockey matches because they get money to play. So even though they're not competitive at all, they're still going to play. But even in that instance, they will suddenly cancel. Like, for example, they were going to play in a World Ice Hockey Championship, a lower division, for the women's ice hockey team in Bled, Slovenia, a few weeks ago, but it was all of a sudden just canceled. Because why? We don't know. At the same time, the men was playing in their counterpart lower tier World Championship in Hong Kong. So, the closer it is to the DPRK, probably the less likely that they are to cancel. But the reasons for the canceling are never clear. And you always just have to put in a little bit of guesswork as to why. And so if Nekohyang does play in the AFC Women's Champions League semifinal, my thought is if they do, it's because they want the prestige. Because if they win that whole competition, then they go on to the World Championship. and that would bring them even more prestige. But if they don't play, then it means that that they're avoiding a relationship with the ROK right now is a priority, and I do believe that that would be the reason. Another factor to consider is that the championship, assuming that Naekohyang could win that championship, they would go on to the world competition, and if they got to the semifinal and the final of the World Cup competition, they would be playing in Miami. They just announced that the final will be held in Miami, and I don't think that the DPRK has a huge desire to go to the United States. It's still up in the air as to whether they will go to the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028. So pretty much everything's up in the air at this point. But you know, you really kind of hope that in the future the DPRK will be a bit more consistent about saying within a reasonable amount of time whether they're going to participate somewhere or not participate. Another thing that I'm really hoping moving forward is that the DPRK is more transparent about how their FA works, how their whole league system works, getting news about the leagues. I mean, we don't need to have like minutes of office meetings between people, right? We just need, how are promotions and relegations done? How are transfers in their market done? How can we have players playing for international teams? This is all really important stuff. I think that we just kind of have to hope, because I think this is kind of the same playbook that they've been having for the past 30, 40 years. It's really, you know, they'll show up when they want to, they'll win when they want to, and they can just kind of bully the international organizations a little bit. Not that I feel bad for international organizations, I just think that, you know, we as fans, we as people who want to see more from the DPRK and see them succeed, I think we deserve a little bit more just kind of honesty from the FA. And yeah, but you know, we'll see on 4th May, and I really hope that we will get to see Naekohyang play in Suwon later this May, because it would be really exciting to see the first club competition between two women's club teams on the Korean Peninsula in ever. It would really be a historic, fantastic thing. Anyway, I'm going to finish my dinner here in Hiroshima, and you will definitely be seeing more from me on the DPRK Athletics channel as things move forward. 안녕히 계십시오. 여기는 히로시마입니다. Oh, and by the way, this meal gets an 8. Delicious.